So when you're going for kill switch, right? Well, ideally it doesn't get wrapped up in itself. I see people clip it under a life jacket. I also see what's more useful to me personally is if you clip it to itself. Now you have your own wrist lanyard, and that's easier to do things with. I find you're able to, like, this hand is always here. You're not, like, if you have to reach up and grab something, if you have to grab your bow line, I'm still in full control of the motorboat. But if I do that, I may rip it off my life jacket, which it's going to stay on the life jacket, come off the engine, then you got to restart your engine. So I just find this is a lot more maneuverable for me. Kind of the other thing is figuring out what side you're driving off of. I know a lot of people teach that you want to be on the starboard side. And I guess in bigger boats, yes, that makes more sense. The navs, the wheel is usually on the starboard side. Just, you know, starboard has right of way, all that custom stuff. It's in these small boats though, like, you're not losing visibility off either side by sitting on a particular side. You can see everywhere. The boat is low. So for me, it really just comes down to what's more maneuverable for you. And the tiller's on the left side of this motor of all these Hondas. So, you know, do whatever ends up working out better for you. But I find that if I have to make a hard turn, I got to reach all the way across the boat to do this, right? Whereas if I'm sitting on the left side, the full turn is only here. So I can be seated here and do a full turn without having to put my body way across the boat like that. And then it just kind of tucks right under your hip, and you're pretty comfortable there. So kind of figuring out which side you want to drive on, and then just kind of making the throttle muscle memory. You'll run into a lot of different throttle situations with different outboards. The Hondas all have their own gear shift, forward, reverse, can't pull start unless it's in neutral. And then here's your throttle. So it just kind of gets down to muscle memory. If you're a left side driver, you know, turning your hand away from you, throttle's up, bringing towards you, throttle's down, vice versa for right hand driving. What else with that? So there's this little guy here is kind of your adjust the tightness of the throttle, so you can crank it all the way down, righty tighty, if you want to be able to, like, put it up and keep it up. Most people like it kind of midway. If you all the way undo it, now it's like a hair trigger. You can, like, throttle up with your pinky. So most people don't like that either. So kind of finding a mid-range, you can just kind of adjust that to whatever tension you like. You don't want to be able to bump it and have it explode on you, but you also want to be able to move it, and you want it to be able to throttle down if you let go by accident. So kind of finding that mid-range, whatever works there for you. We're going to go over how a couple thought processes and stuff to go over with capsized boat. I've got those here, so we're gonna do a little demo. But the main things you're looking for is you need to make sure you have a very good awareness of where everybody is in the water. Well, I mean, for one, obviously, there's 2 kids in the boat. You need to know where those 2 kids are. If you're missing a kid, that's the top priority, is find the kid. And make sure they're okay. You know, if somebody comes up bleeding or he's bumped his head and isn't responding correctly, get him in the boat and get in the motorboat and figure the sailboat out later. So yeah, obviously the safety comes first. So basically, the best way, really, I'll say that the best way to right a boat from the motorboat, if you're, yeah, that boat's going straight down. To right a boat from the motorboat, if the sailors can't do it, is it's called the masthead lift. So basically, you're coming around, grabbing onto the mast here. So as far as safety goes, as soon as you're dealing with this mast with any part of the boat, right, physically, you don't have control over your motor, even if you have the kill switch. If you, I don't know, weird things happen, somehow go back and you're like straining over and your foot comes and slaps the throttle, or the gear shift rather, now you're moving suddenly, and you may not notice it until you're like driven over somebody, you know. So weird things happen. So long story short, as far as the safety goes, as soon as you have physical contact with the boat, commit to staying in physical contact with them, right? You're going to stay touching the boat until they don't need your help. That's the fastest way to get them going again. So what you're going to do is actually shut your engine off as soon as you're touching them, or as soon as you got a good grip on them, right? And then this masthead lift, how this works, you're going to be here, you're going to lift, and it's very light up here, it's very easy. As long as, if you're physically capable enough to drive the motorboat, you can do this. Like I'm probably lifting maybe 30 pounds right now. And you're just walking up the mast. And again, we're staying in physical contact. So as soon as we get here, we're gonna make sure that we don't go down the back edge of the main. We're gonna stay along the mast. And when we get to the side stay, we're gonna walk down the side stay. We're gonna walk all the way up there. And then, again, we don't have to worry about the boat because we've shut it off. We don't have to worry about the prop, it's off. We just bring the sailboat up to us. And because we're actually standing here, we have such a good leverage on this that unless it's really, really blowing, you can support the boat. You can hold the boat up in a way that sailors who are sitting on the centerboard down there may not be able to do. And just keep in contact here, and like we're going down, we're gonna jibe in a second. Ideally, we'd be able to come up on a different side, so we're on the leeward side of the boat. But as we come up, just bring that boat alongside you here. If there's any kids in there, just watch as they jibe over. And then again, keep on that side stay, and you can hold on to that boat, right? You don't have to worry about throwing an extra kid on the centerboard or anything. You just pull it right up here. And then again, stay connected to the boat until they are completely all set. This is the point, and I used to do this too before I went to before I got better training in this. If anybody's interested, U.S. Sailing Level 2 goes through a lot of this like capsize recovery. It's very, very good information. I still have the books from it if anybody's interested in looking through those. But what we would often do is we'd come and like hold their bow line to hold the bow into the wind, and then watch them struggle for 5 or 10 minutes to right the boat. And then as soon as they're in, we're like, all right, you good? Okay, cool. And they're like sitting there trying to fix everything. But so you're physical contact with the boat, side to side here, their side to your side. So you don't have to worry about heading away from the wind or whatever. You're just kind of sitting here, idling along. They can take all the time they need, get things worked out and everything. One thing to note is when they're in the water, if they're having trouble, we teach them this, but it's good to make sure the boom vang, this diagonal line here, should be loose to bring the sail back up. Basically what it's doing is if we crank it on real tight, it's pulling the end of the boom down, so it's tightening that the leech, the back edge of the sail, and so the whole sail is like tightened up. Any breeze it gets, it's going to power up that sail and start blowing over. If we loosen the vang, now you can kind of see the whole sail is just kind of flapping around. It's able to dump the power and not try to blow that boat over. It just makes your job holding here a bit easier. A couple more things about when you're approaching the boat, like when it's capsized. I see sometimes people try to go and like, especially if the boat's like down in the mud, they'll try to go and throw somebody onto the centerboard, and you really don't want to do that. Because as you come up, it's very difficult to like perfectly park your boat. You're gonna end up bumping it a little bit. And if the mast is down in the mud, you bumping into the bottom of the boat has just shoved it further into the mud. And then somebody jumping on the centerboard is shoving it further into the mud again. So a couple different things that are possible to do for getting a boat up out of the mud. First would be if you have got a line, you can untie your bow line or untie a mark line that you have in the boat. Or have one of the kids get to one of the chain plates, one of these U-bolt things here. Ideally the one on top, if you can reach it. And then throw that over the top of the boat and pull. So imagine the boat sideways, throw the line over the top and be pulling away in the direction of how the mast would want to come out of the mud with your motorboat. You can even tie onto, with the longer line, the easier it is to actually like do all this because you have more room to maneuver. But you can even tie onto the back there and just pull, you're directionally pulling the boat straight out of the mud. the difficulty that you get with trying to just pile more weight on the centerboard is at a certain angle. If this is the boat upright, you go sideways, now you go down. If you put more and more weight here, now you're actually just driving the mast into the mud, and you never get out. So it can become a little difficult to deal with, right? The other one more thing you can try with a mast in the mud is if you real carefully come into the cockpit here, kind of if the boat's kind of sideways in the water here, real carefully idling in here, and your mainsail's down under the water, so you don't have to worry so much about getting the prop caught in that, but real gently, especially with this rib, we've got the inflatable bow so that it's nice and soft, but real gently come up, and you're going to contact right about here. This is like this being the tank that's up in the air while the boat is on its side, and just give a little bit of throttle, try to kind of just push it out of the mud like that. But kind of again along the same lines of tying to the chain plate, you're just trying to get force in the direction of that mast, pulling it up out of the water. So the deal with putting people on the centerboard often doesn't work because the force is directed into the water, pushing that thing farther down in the mud. Alright, so first off, I've been sailing around a little bit, so let me put the kill switch back on. Took it so nobody would run off with my boat, even though I'm the only one out here right now. So we'll start our boy up. There we go. Most of the ones that we've been operating with right now, they're for the most part good with no choke. You may have to choke a bit if you go to start it, but really, like you just saw there, they often, if you leave the choke in after it's not needed, it'll actually cause it to run a lot rougher. Which that's kind of how a choke works, I guess. I don't know a lot about engines, but that's the only thing I really know about engines is from like running these things for the last 3 years. But if your engine is sputtering and trying to die on you, try putting the choke in. Maybe that doesn't fix it, sometimes it doesn't, but you may be over-choked rather than under-choked at times. At any rate, so when you're going to tow, I like to be careful of the cleats supplied because, I mean, you can see I think these boats are 7, 8, 9 years old, and things start going weird. We need to re-adhesive this guy, but he's not the only thing keeping in mind is adhesive, right? So we don't want to put a lot of stress on that if we can help it. But we've got these very nice lifting points in the back. So what I'll actually do is just tie on here. You tie a bowline if you want. It sometimes takes a while to get it undone. You can also just do like a slippery hitch, just one, and then the second one's like a loop instead of the end, you know, like this, and that'll hold it for you. And then when you need to let him go, just bam, pull the loop out, and you're good. You may have to undo the one last hitch, but that's your towing point. That's where you want to be towing off of. You can actually do one boat on each of these, and these boats, I mean, this is the 15 horsepower, the rest of them are 9.9s. You're not able to get up to a speed at which the boats are like sliding around uncontrollably. They're able to easily fend themselves off of each other if you're towing two boats off the back there. You can tow from several different places. If you've got somebody in the boat with you, you can have them up here. You can just do like a side tow and keep them pretty much in line with your boat. Just holding on to that side stay there to keep them there, and then you can drive. If you're doing that, you've got to make sure that the kids in the boat are still steering with their tiller. Reason being is that the sailboat, I mean, you can tell from right here, the sailboat is actually longer than the motorboat. The bigger boat is the one that ends up steering the whole contraption, right? So you're providing power, but they steer you. Like, you can have your motor all the way over, but if their tiller is the opposite way, you're not going this way. Technically, for a proper tow, you should be tying around the mast, right around here, and then leading up forward to your towing bit. But that's our current bow lines are too short to do that, and I could cut a bunch of others. What we're trying to work on right now is we've got a really long line of polypro, the like floating water ski rope, and we're going to see what we can work up with that. But until then, it's just coming right off the bow. The main concern with this is that it's designed to take a load here, but adding an extra load can end up to be more than it's made for. And these boats are pretty overbuilt. Collegiate FJs this is what they're made to do, is last years and years in a matched fleet, and you don't want something weird like this to mess up one boat in your fleet, and now your fleet is 17 instead of 18, and nobody wants to deal with that. So they're very overbuilt to prevent damage, but the safer way is to go around the mast when you have the option, and then that should set you up.